Welcome, Anastasis. I think most people here know what Runway is, but maybe give us a 10-second version, and then we're going to watch a little demo of your latest product before we get started.
Yeah, so Runway is a full-stack AI company that's building kind of what's next in the creative tools space. We both build foundation models for image and video generation, but also deploy to a wide range of creative tools, and also support this emerging community of AI filmmakers and AI video.
And we're going to see a demo of your latest AI filmmaking product, Gen 3, right? All right, that's very cool. So it seems like based on that video, you guys have made pretty good progress in the last 4 years. I'm interested, I had actually not seen that video until this moment, so it seems like you really homed in on some faces in particular as kind of a big leap forward, and having played around with some of the previous generations of Runway, I think that was something where never really felt like human faces were sort of up to par or up to reality. Like, I guess I'm interested, is that something you focused on for this generation, or did it just arise naturally out of the model? Like, what are the big leaps forward with Gen 3?
Yeah, so I think this video does a good job at contextualizing where we are in the kind of video model trajectory. Like, we're still at the moment where you're getting really meaningful improvements every year, and like really the use cases and the applications of the models really radically change from a year-to-year basis. For Gen 3 Alpha, so that's our latest text-to-video model that we're going to be rolling out in the coming days. There's a few different things that changed from Gen 2. So the first one is just simply scale. Just like the Gen 3 Alpha is trained a lot more compute, a lot more data than Gen 2, and that on its own kind of leads to a lot of emergent kind of improvements on 3D consistency, on the kind of understanding of physics, of the different aspects of the world, and kind of video. And another thing about Gen 3 Alpha was it kind of encompasses the way we build things at Runway, which is really researchers being in collaboration with kind of video creators and artists that work in-house at Runway. And the model was really built like from the feedback that we got both from our users, but also from internally as we were developing the model. So what was a kind of really kind of strong design kind of consideration that we had when we built Gen 3 Alpha is it needs to feel different than kind of previous generations of video models, and it needs to feel more naturalistic, less have this generated aesthetic, and part of it was just this focus on kind of humans and making sure that you can generate humans with kind of expressive range, making sure you can simulate kind of human actions in a much better extent than with the previous models. Identity and character consistency is a feedback we got all the time from filmmakers using the platform. You need to be able to have the kind of character identity stay consistent through the rest of the video. So that's something we paid a lot of attention to. The other piece that was really important was really the ability to dynamically change the scene through the duration of the video. So you'll see like some of the examples in the video that you saw earlier, you had this really kind of dramatic transitions that were happening where
different backgrounds, different scenery, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Got
So
it.
you're starting from a library, you're kind of opening a door, and it's like a large field, and you have and the way we attempted that was essentially becoming much better about how we caption videos in training data. So part of it was achieved by scale, but some of it was really making sure we can have the model like have a deep understanding of kind of transitions through the course of the video, so it doesn't feel like it's a moving image with a very limited motion.
And how much more, I mean, you mentioned, more scale, more data, each year you've taken these big leaps forward. Like, how much more scale and how much more data did Gen 3 take versus Gen 2?
It's definitely orders of magnitude more.
Okay. Order of magnitude or order of magnitudes?
Tudes, I would
Tudes?
say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 100x or more.
Yeah, close to that. So
It's a pretty big leap forward. Does it cost 100x more to train as well?
no, there were a lot of improvements in algorithm efficiency that
Yeah.
were coupled with kind of the increase in scale, so it didn't cost 100x more.
Okay.
I think the computer vision domain is slightly behind, I would say, the language domain in terms of like the knowledge and the competence in like being able to train those large models, but I think we're now seeing that kind of catch up, and a lot of the same learnings from the language domain apply to the video domain, and so that was kind of partly, like I think Gen 3 Alpha, we really tried to combine all the learnings that we had building those video models at a smaller scale, and then all the kind of advancements that have been happening on kind of the kind of large language domain. But I do think we're still very early. So I think we're maybe at the GPT-1 moment of video generation.
GPT-1 moment of
There is
video
so much
generation.
more,
Okay.
so much more to do, I think, to further improve those models.
And you mentioned the sort of feedback loop from filmmakers, both outside Runway and internally. Like, who are the sort of core users of the product? Like, who are the most hardcore Runway, hours a day users for you guys today? Like, who's your target customer or the person using Runway the most?
I mean, if we take just the absolute number of hours spent in Runway, I
Yeah.
think we have people that are literally using it like 10 hours a day and like generating constantly.
What is their job? Like, what do they do? Or is
pretty
it just for fun, or?
So we have a wide range of customers. So we have kind of a lot of individual creators, a lot of kind of small teams of creatives. We also have enterprise customers in kind of the ad agency world and film studios. A lot of tech startups use Runway. And the main value that they see in Runway is really the speed of iteration. So now you're able to turn an idea for like a spec for like a advertisement or a short film into a real output, like in the course of a day instead of needing a week. You don't have to scout for location necessarily. You can just go, like if you want to film waterfalls in Iceland, you can just generate that, and you don't have to go all the way to Iceland. And I think the other point is that it doesn't need to be a 0 to 1 transition from those kind of more traditional video editing techniques to the generative techniques. Runway is very often used in conjunction with the traditional tools and really kind of is used on one part of the kind of production pipeline.
Got it. And yeah, you mentioned it sort of being used as like almost a prototyping or a storyboarding tool, like where you can sort of put together an idea for a film in Runway and then maybe actually go shoot it and save some money on that iteration phase. Is that like most of the use right now, or are you seeing it sort of as the model improves, becoming more and more a part of the finished product?
Yeah, so it's a mix. So we've seen with Gen 2 a lot of usage on the storyboarding phase. So you're now able to, especially with larger creative teams, a lot of time is actually spent pitching ideas, really kind of wireframing or storyboarding how the final output would look. And you can do that much quicker when you can really use the generative models to build those like 80% versions of the final thing. And we also saw Gen 2 being used for some for B-roll in maybe a video production that might be mostly real content, and in some cases for also fully generated films. But we expect the percentage of kind of those generative models being used in production to really increase quite a bit with Gen 3 Alpha, with kind of and the next models that we release.
I mean, coming back to your comment about us being at GPT-1 for video right now, I mean, this is something that fascinates me is like, at what point are we at, let's say, GPT-4, right, where maybe the analogy in video production is I can make a feature Hollywood film and it looks like it's, maybe it's not at a quality of a $200 million film, but let's say it's at the quality of a $30 or $40 million film at home. Like, how far are we from that? How many orders of magnitude? How long will it take to get there? What's your perspective on the future there?
From that, I don't think we're too far. I would say we're probably a year or two away.
Okay, a year or two away.
But
So like 25 or 26.
But I don't think that's
feature Hollywood film.
I don't think that's the final stage either.
I believe that's not the final stage,
the final
but that's
stage
still
is
kind of mind-blowing.
You can generate a conversation and kind of like the one we're having right now, and you can simulate every aspect of the real world in really great detail, and that's and that kind of broadens the use case even further, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I got to come back to that, but first, just talking through a year or two from now, we can generate a multi-tens of millions feature quality Hollywood film from home, assumedly somewhat cheaply and reasonably quickly. What does the world look like? Is YouTube flooded with cinematic 2-hour videos coming out of Runway? Is every single kid that wanted to be a TikToker now going to be a Runway-based filmmaker? I mean, what do you? It's almost incomprehensible to me what the world looks like in which anyone can just make Hollywood quality films at home in a couple hours, I guess.
Yeah, the honest answer is I don't know. I think
it's only a year and a half away, so we better prepare.
Part of Runway is really figuring things out as we work closely with artists and letting them kind of help us think through those questions. There is, I would say, kind of on the order of magnitude, about 1,000 films, or like in the thousands of films released every year.
Yeah.
There is millions of books being made.
Sure.
I think that gap is going to close quite a bit, and you're going to see. Not just on the absolute number, more films being made, but also a wider kind of diversity of film, like people telling stories that previously just didn't exist in film form, just because it was kind of so expensive to make. And you're going to see, I think, also a wider range of kind of creativity potentially. Like what we hear from film, like there's a lot of people using Runway. Some people never made film before and now are able to kind of start making film, and there is traditional filmmakers that are discovering those generative models. What we hear from traditional filmmakers is very often like, I have a range of different ideas, some of them on the crazier side, some of them more kind of safe side. And now I can really try out the ideas that, I really have low confidence that they're going to work, but if they work, they would be really compelling. I wouldn't otherwise try them because it'd just be too expensive and to convince a lot of people that this is a reasonable idea to try. But now I can just, kind of make it first, kind of create it on my own, and then kind of see how it performs.
Is there a type of film or like a genre of film where you feel like it's not really getting made today, but would be getting made in a world where it's, apparently 10 million times cheaper to make a feature Hollywood film? Like, are there areas where you're like, oh, actually, like nobody makes these kind of movies, but they would if they could, if it was easy and cheap to try out?
Think of all the kind of genres of novels that exist.
Okay.
Like, think of the kind of genres of film that exist. I think there is maybe a lot of kind of stories that not necessarily.
So like more fan fiction, more like mashups between genres, like remixes of things.
A lot of that, very likely. I think we're basically going to see an explosion in terms of like the fiction on the fiction film. Of all kinds.
Okay.
That's not currently being made.
Okay. Yeah. I guess we'll leave imagining that as an exercise to the audience, but I'm interested in the next step. So you said, okay, Hollywood filmmaking a year and a half away, 2 years away. Beyond that is simulating this entire experience, this entire conversation we're having. What does the sort of consumption look like for someone using a version of a Runway-generated project that's 4 years from now or 5 years from now? Is it like a game? Is it interactive? Is it generated in real time based on what I'm doing? Is it AR, VR, or 3D immersive experience? Is it all of the above? Like, what's your perspective on the 5-year out version of Runway if we're only 2 years out from feature Hollywood films?
So the way you currently use Runway is you type in a prompt or you use one of our different control modes, and then you wait for a minute or two to actually get a short video back. Mm-hmm. I think increasingly as those models improve in performance, as we get closer to real time, as the 3D consistency and further improves, you're gonna see kind of more interactive experience made with those models. So essentially it will be less like, creating video content and more like navigating this world. And you can even use this to build video content, like kind of simulating the experience of being on set and trying out different ideas. I think we're gonna maybe see more of that happening. But I would imagine those models becoming kind of rendering kind of engines that used as kind of the foundation of games and different experiences, as well as they become more performant, as you can deploy them on device. There's a lot of challenges to get there. Those models are still really heavy, really expensive to run, but I think those will be kind of in due time improve.
So do you think this is sort of ultimately disruptive to Unity and Unreal Engine and other game engines that people use to make video games today, or do you think it's just a new form factor of content completely, where I'm living in an interactive video simulation through Runway?
I can imagine becoming a component of those engines.
Okay.
I don't.
Got it.
It's going to be probably a gradual transition of like maybe these models become kind of increasingly part of kind of the rendering pipeline, and eventually might become kind of the full kind of rendering pipeline itself. I do think there's, beyond the fidelity and the resolution and so forth, there is a lot to figure out in terms of the control with those models, and that piece will need to further improve to get there.
Interesting. Well, I feel like one of the themes of the conference today is, at sort of various layers of the stack, there's frequently a lot of competitors and a lot of folks sort of, leapfrogging each other, and it seems like you guys kind of took maybe the latest leapfrog forward with Gen 3 Alpha, but I'm interested when you compare to, things like Sora from OpenAI or Google's, Veo, and, there's probably a couple other video models that are at your level. Like, how do you see yourself being set apart? Is it around your relationship with creatives? Is it around data or just superior model development? Or do you think in the end there will be 3-4 winners and it's all good as long as we're one of those?
So I would say one first differentiation is the model is going to be available to everyone to use.
Yes. So you're first in that front. Yes.
The thing that we really spend a lot of time on building at Runway is, so there is the kind of pre-training and really building those new base models, but there's a big gap between models that can produce really compelling outputs that have like high fidelity to something that feels useful and controllable. You need to build a whole kind of tool set around those models and invest in really learning from artists and how they want to use them. So to give an example, when you first released Gen 2, you could only use it via text prompting. So you type in a sentence and you get back an output. Yeah. We quickly found out that filmmakers are not necessarily thinking of a shot or a scene in terms of just semantic description. Yeah. They're thinking about how does the camera move, how do the characters interact, how do visual elements on the scene kind of move. And so we built a lot of tooling around kind of providing that motion control. So as the base models improve, the kinds of controls might be different. And I think what we do really well at Runway is bridging kind of the community feedback and working directly with artists to build the next version of those models. And I think that gap can be underestimated, how difficult it is to really build good products around those models.
Yeah. I mean, so for my last question, you pointed me to Runway's AI Film Festival, where you had a number of filmmakers make different short films using Runway Gen 2, and I'm sure next year's will be even better with Gen 3. The question I had after we spoke was, okay, so when is the AI Oscars, or when is a meaningful portion of the Oscars AI generated or using Runway or something like that?
Yeah, I was going to say there's not going to be an AI Oscars. It's going to be Oscars.
Yeah, the Oscars are just going to be the AI Oscars. Okay, so what year is the Oscars the AI Oscars? 2 years from now?
Probably. So I would say one of the reasons why we created the AI Film Festival is that we felt that people were, that kind of content was not being showcased enough, and wanted to provide a platform for filmmakers that are using those models to kind of showcase their work. But as those models become more widely used, it's going to be kind of a continuation of the tradition of filmmaking. So we're going to see. I can't place a bet on that. I think 2 years sounds reasonable that we're going to see films that use kind of generative models as a big part of their production process be nominated or win an award. But I don't think AI filmmaking is necessarily going to become it's compartmentalized thing. It's going to become all the variation and all the kind of diversity of film. You're going to see it in AI filmmaking as well, and those models become demystified and used on an everyday basis by creatives.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Really great
Thank you.
chatting.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.